Hello my dear students, welcome to this English literature class. In this video I am going to discuss with you some important question answers from the lesson A Face in the Dark by Ruskin Bond. You have already gone through the story, so this video is just a revision of that story. And I will be speaking out, or rather discussing with you a few questions along with the answers, so that you get an idea what you are supposed to write in your answers. The main emphasis is on the textual words. You should be writing the words from the story. That is very important, right? So as I speak out, please do listen it very carefully. Question number 1. Where does the story take place? What time is it? So the story takes place along the forest path in the middle of the pine trees that leads towards the boarding school in Shimla. What time is it? The time is late night. That's all. You are not supposed to write very long answers. Supposingly this question comes to you in your board. The question carries 3 marks and the answer will be 2 plus 1. So for 2 marks, the words picked up will be the story, forest path, middle of pine trees towards the boarding school. And 1 mark for the word late night. This is how your answers will be marked in the board. So there is no point in writing very lengthy answers. Write to the point, but write whatever is required. Next question. Who is Mr. Oliver? Where is he now? Yes, Mr. Oliver is an Anglo-Indian teacher who is working in a public school in Shimla. Where is he now? Right now, he has gone to Shimla for a stroll and is about to return back to his school at night. Question number 3. What is the reference to Kipling in the above story? There is a line in the story. The first paragraph, from before Kipling's time, the school had been run. So what is the reference to Kipling in the story? How does the mention of Kipling help the story? Well, the reference of Rudyard Kipling, the famous writer in the late 1980s, and he was also a Nobel Prize winner. So what is the reference? The reference is to Rudyard Kipling, the famous Nobel Prize winning story writer who visited Shimla many years in his late 1880s. How does the mention of Kipling help the story? The mention of the Kipling gives a historical touch and authenticity to the story. Authenticity, the reality, the truth to the story. Next question. What do you know about the school in Shimla? Yes, you have to write the textual words. What do you know about the school in Shimla? Number 1, the school is a boys' school. Number 2, boys of wealthy Indian families study in that school. Number 3, the boys wear blazers, caps and ties. Number 4, it is called the Eton of the East. So these are the words which have been picked up from the first paragraph of the story. Question number 5. What is the reference to Eton of the East? Now, Eton was the most famous public school in Britain in the last century. It was a very famous and very renowned school. Just as Eton was so famous, similarly, this school in Shimla was the best residential school for the Indians. So the two schools have been compared. So that means the Shimla school has been compared, that it is it was as famous and as renowned as the school of Eton in Britain. Next, what was the attraction for Mr. Oliver in Shimla? How did he go to Shimla? Two questions in one question. What was attraction for Mr. Oliver? The cinema, theatres and the restaurants were the attraction for Mr. Oliver in Shimla. How did he go to Shimla? He used to go to Shimla by walking every evening. Next question. What route did he take while returning? What did he take it? Yes. What route did he take while returning? While returning from the school one night, he took the shortcut, the route through the forest filled with pine trees. Why did he take it? He took this route because this route was a shortcut and he could reach school back spending less time. Next, what did Oliver carry with him when he walked through the pine forest? Whenever Mr. Oliver walked through the pine forest, he used to carry a torch with him. Now, fun sentences, otherwise enough, but at least you should write 3 sentences for every answer so you can elongate that he used to go through this pine forest because he took it as a shortcut and it used to save his time to reach back to his school. Next, question number 9. What effect did the wind make on the forest? Yes. So when the wind passed through the pine forest, it made strange, airy, terrible, mysterious, sad, fearful sounds. You can all use all these words to describe the sound of the trees. Next, what does not an imaginative man means in the paragraph? There is a line used, but he was not an imaginative man. What does this mean? It means that Mr. Oliver was not at all an afraid man. No, he was not at all afraid or scared of anything. He was a brave man because to cross the forest full of pine trees making lot of sad and airy sounds is not an easy task. Any normal person would be fearful of it, but Mr. Oliver was not. Next question. What did Mr. Oliver see when he was returning back while passing through the pine forest? Yes, when Mr. Oliver was passing through the pine forest, he saw a figure of a boy sitting on a rock. And he was weeping and with his hands on his face. What was Mr. Oliver's observation when he approached the boy, or we can say describe the posture of the boy? So what is the posture of the boy? The boy was sobbing, he was crying. Number 2, his head was hung down. Number 3, his face held in his hands. Number 4, his body shook convulsively. Number 5, his crying was soundless. Next question. How did Mr. Oliver feel? Why did Mr. Oliver feel uneasy? What do you infer from Mr. Oliver's observations? Yes, why did Mr. Oliver feel uneasy? Mr. Oliver felt uneasy because the child was crying, but his cry was soundless. What do you infer about from Mr. Oliver's observation? So Mr. Oliver inferred, he observed that everything was not normal. There was something strange about the whole thing. Next. Why did Mr. Oliver move closer to the boy? Well, Mr. Oliver moved closer to the boy in order to recognize the boy. The face of the boy was hidden and Mr. Oliver wanted to see who the boy was. Why did Mr. Oliver think that the boy to be a miscreant? He thought the boy was miscreant by number one, because it was too late. It was night time. It was too late in the evening and the boys of his school were not allowed to stay out during the late hours. Number two, since he had done something wrong against the rules of the school, he wanted to punish the boy. So he called that boy a miscreant. Next, when did Mr. Oliver's anger give way to the concern? When Mr. Oliver asked the boy what his problem was. But the boy did not say anything and instead he kept on weeping. At that time, Mr. Oliver's gave way to the concern. Anger gave way to the concern. Next, how did Mr. Oliver react when he saw the face of the boy? When ultimately the boy lifted his face, Mr. Oliver was totally shocked. He got scared because the boy was without any features on the face. What are the textual words? Without any eyes, nose or lips. And all of a sudden the torch fell down from his hands. Next. Is there anything earlier in the story to show that Mr. Oliver was brave? If yes, give evidence. Yes, earlier in the story we have a sentence which tells us that Mr. Oliver was a brave man. Which sentence is it? But Mr. Oliver was not a nervous or imaginative man. This sentence tells us that otherwise Mr. Oliver was a brave man. Then next question. What words are used by the author to build up the climax or to scare the readers? What words are used? The batteries were running down, moved fitfully, flickering light, figure of a boy, appeared to be crying, body shook convulsively. Such words build up the climax of the story. Next, who did Mr. Oliver stumble on? What was he doing there? So when Mr. Oliver got scared, he rushed towards the direction of the school, but he stumbled onto a watchman who was carrying a lantern in the middle of the path. Next, what did the watchman do? When Mr. Oliver narrated the whole incident about the boy to the watchman, what did the watchman do? The watchman held up the lantern to his face and showed his own face, which also had no features at all, and the watchman asked him whether the face of the boy was just as it was his face. Contrast the question number 21. Contrast the two different aspects of Mr. Oliver's character as a fearless man, as a haunted fellow. Yes, we see the two extreme contrasts of Mr. Oliver in the story. In the beginning, he is shown as a fearless man because he dares to cross the forest full of pine trees, giving terrible sounds during the late night when nobody dares to do so. But in the end, we find Mr. Oliver as a haunted fellow because he got totally scared of seeing the boy and later on the watchman, as both of them possessed no face at all. According to you, question number 22, according to you, what type of the teacher Mr. Oliver is? What do you like most about him? According to me, Mr. Oliver is a very soft-hearted, devoted teacher because right during the night when he saw the boy sitting in the forest, he did not get scared or he did not leave the boy. In fact, he moved ahead in order to save the boy. Next question, number 24. A Face in the Dark is a supernatural story. Comment. Yes, we can comment on this story by using three main headings. Number 1, that an unusual sight which he saw of the boy. Number 2, unexpected situation faced by Mr. Oliver in front of everyone, in front of the readers, that is. He was all alone. And number 3, face of the Watchmen. All these three things depict the supernatural aspect of the story. Then last question, how does the story end? And can you guess what would have happened to Mr. Oliver at the end of the story? So the story ended abruptly. There is no end because the moment the watchman revealed the face, everything went out. There was no light, there was complete darkness. So it is upon the readers to think what would have happened. It was a sudden and abrupt end. The second part of the question, can you guess what would have happened? Well, there could be three possibilities. Number 1, Mr. Oliver would have fainted at that time due to shock, and in the morning the people from the school would have come to take him and to look after him. The second possibility will be that maybe he got so shocked that he could have got a heart failure. Maybe he did not survive. And the third possibility could be that somebody had played a prank. Maybe the school boys tried to play a prank on the on their teacher, and the moment Mr. Oliver would have fainted, they would have all come to take him along and tell him the whole truth. So it is upon to you, upon to the reader, to imagine what would have been the end. Please don't play such pranks with anyone. So I hope by these question answers you will be getting an idea, and this will be a revision for you to understand and comprehend the story in a better way. If you liked it, give a thumbs up, and if you have still not subscribed, please do subscribe to my channel. Bye bye.